tell me why you don't want Dan Horowitz representing you anymore?
I have prepared some notes, and I'm a little flustered after just talking with my civil lawyer. Essentially, there's been a complete breakdown in communication between me and Mr. Horowitz, which has increased since the death of his wife, Pamela. I was asked by the court on December 2nd whether I could proceed with Dan as my attorney, and he was also asked if he could proceed, and whether there was any conflict of interest. And I said that I wasn't aware of any on my part at that time, and since then I've changed my mind about that. There have been certain things have come to my attention that I was not aware of at the time. And I could see how certain statements that Dan has made to me could potentially be used in the defense of Mr. Dulesky, who is charged with the murder of Dan's wife. And given that alone, I cannot see how Dan can continue as my attorney.
Can you get more specific? What has he said that has made you concerned, that has made you think that there is an issue?
At this point in time, I've been cautioned by my civil attorney not to disclose what was said, and I would like to hold on to that. I made a police report, and I'll leave it at that for now. I am preparing a declaration, which I will submit in court. I understand there's a court date tomorrow, and I'll be deciding how much of what was said I'm going to put into that. But aside from that issue of possibly being a witness in the defense of Scott Dulesky, I have other issues with Dan's representation and Ivan's representation of me, which I think that anybody who was aware of them would agree that their representation should end.
Can you get into any, if you don't want, so I'm clear, there are statements he made that you think would clear Mr. Dulesky?
I can't make a judgment call like that because I am not an attorney and I'm not an investigator. I'm not a law enforcement person. But it's my understanding that that when Mrs. Horowitz was killed, Pamela Vitale, that the police did look at Mr. Horowitz as a possible suspect, and then someone made an anonymous call and implicated Scott Dulesky, a 16-year-old boy. I don't know the details of that investigation, and I don't know how much evidence there is, but I do know that there were certain statements made to me by Dan which could be useful in the defense of Scott Dulesky, and which lead me to wonder whether Scott Dulesky is guilty.
Do they lead you to believe that Dan Horowitz is involved in his wife's death?
I think that when someone dies and there is a murder, that we all, have suspicions about people who had a motive or who had access to that person, and we all wonder, and Mr. Horowitz was a suspect. The police wondered. He was detained for a short period of time, and based on certain statements to me, I wonder, in the absence of a confession from Mr. Dulesky, I will continue to have doubts as to whether Mr. Dulesky is guilty and whether Dan Horowitz is innocent or not. And I guess that's the nature of a crime. When a violent crime is committed, we don't know for sure, whether the husband is innocent or the wife is innocent. And look at me. I've been in jail for 3.5 years. And people don't know. I haven't had a trial. And after a trial, and after the evidence, all the evidence is introduced, people will have a more clear idea. But if I'm exonerated, some people will still wonder. And if I'm convicted, some people will wonder whether I'm actually guilty. It's the nature of a violent death. And I can't proceed to trial with an attorney under these circumstances.
Do you think